All right, I think we're live. Or almost live. There we go. Are you running this one, Emily?
Seems like you already started. Take it away.
I see how that works. Don't forget to sign the doc if you haven't already. I don't know if you've said that yet. Do we have any new faces? It looks like we don't. Let's move on to outstanding spec VRs. Share. Where's this? Here we go. Awesome. So we have platform creation time, which Natalie moved out of draft, I think a week or so ago, 7 days ago. Yeah. I merged the RC for you, Natalie. I guess abusing my core team powers, even though I'm not on the sub team. And so if people could just review this. I think if we get Steven's approval, we can merge this one. Is that right?
Yeah.
Steven or Joe?
I know Joe's just like super underwater this week, so.
I'll take a look.
But yeah, whenever you get, if you have changes you want to make, or if you approve it, I can get that merged in. Build detect positional args. I know last time we had this discussion around kind of the weird headers that I started, and Michael made some changes. Do you have thoughts on this part, Emily?
I still see the headers in the latest changes. So I'm on board with the plan, but I don't.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it's been implemented yet.
Can you maybe just respond here, Emily, saying you're on board with the plan?
Yep.
Just so you have that
do.
feedback. Cool. Outside of that, is there actual other feedback on the non-deprecation pieces? I think we're seem pretty clear cut to me. That wraps up spec PRs, unless you wanted to talk about your draft stuff at all, Emily, for the image extension work.
Just a plea for everyone to look at it. Yeah, that's all.
Does this basically supersede Joe's PR? I don't understand this one.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I built off of what he did, but I think this could just replace that PR.
Should I close the other one?
Yeah, I think so, unless we're going to get back to the other one for some reason, which I don't see happening.
Yeah.
It'll still be here and accessible even if you close it, right? So
Yeah, we can always reopen it.
$298.
298. Spec release planning.
We're about to ship the release candidate for lifecycle 014, which will have support for build pack 08 and platform 09.
Okay.
I think.
Go ahead.
Oh, so last time we sort of said that we were going to be stubborn and require those top two issues to go in before we could cut the specs, like adding some clarification. I think, you know, Emily and myself have both volunteered to take those on. So that's probably the last remaining blocker for cutting this one.
Are the positional, is this positional arg also blocking and in life cycle 14?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
24? Okay,
it is. Yeah, just that one has an existing PR.
right. Okay. And then platform 09.
Could you click on it? I think that one's already.
Is this has just not been closed?
Yeah.
Sometimes because we're merging into these branches and not to main, like the auto closing
Yeah,
doesn't
that's-
work, so they just
okay.
fall out of date.
Are you okay with me closing this issue?
Yeah,
you
because I see
asking?
that.
Let's close.
If you just click on whatever PR 290 is, I think if PR 290 has been merged, then we're good.
Yeah.
At the bottom, I left that comment.
Cool. Do you not have permission to close this, Natalie?
I think I do.
Okay.
Forgot about it.
Cool. All right. I think that's probably it for upcoming stuff and release planning. Also missing something.
I guess distribution of 3. I know I was kind of championing that a little bit before I went on a break.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Do we know, if I'm not mistaken, the distribution team is kind of managing this? Do we know what input there is from that side of things, or am I just good to continue to move this needle forward to completion?
I think you're good to move this forward. I mean, the only real person who's on distribution is Joe, right? More or less.
I want to
Yeah.
talk about whether we should have an RFC for some of these changes in the distribution spec.
I think that's the natural course of events. But I know that we've also sometimes created a spec PR. And then if we feel like those spec PRs require discussion, we bubble it back to an RFC. Does that work for you, or is there a specific process you'd like us to follow?
I think one of the things that stands out as a big change based on what's on that branch now is that we've moved build and run images over from platform into distribution. It seems like more than just a trivial thing. And I guess I have some questions about the migration path there. It's like, how does that play with the versions that we still have in platform? You know, if we're changing certain pieces of data, and maybe the life cycle needs a certain piece of data, but right now the life cycle doesn't specify distributions that it looks at. To me, they feel like open questions that we would have hammered out in an RFC. So although I don't have strong objections to the plan, I feel like there's holes in our conversation about what it would take to roll it out.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I guess it seems like a more holistic conversation than a very specific targeted feature. Would you say that the RFC is the idea or proposal of moving the build and run images into the distribution spec? Has that been sort of like the end goal and the question to be discussed?
It seems like in this RFC, the distribution spec is like taking on more. It's the place where we're not just describing specifically how to distribute a build pack image, we're describing how to distribute a life cycle and a build and a run. And, you know, we're making decisions about all these labels. And whenever we've made big decisions like that in the past, it's been an RFC.
Yeah, I think it all like organically evolved from conversations on how to progress with the stack removal changes. And some of the discussions that spun out of that were about how we already kind of intermingle a lot of the interfaces the way that they currently stand. And so this was sort of like a path to creating that clear separation. So I think that's sort of what has happened and why we are where we are. Not opposing the RFC discussion. I guess I'm just not sure exactly how to go about it, if that makes sense.
You know, we've talked for a while about sort of like a doc describing the rollout plan for removal of stacks. Could we capture it in there? To me, it feels like I can sort of understand how all these changes flow out of both the stack RFC and the builder spec RFC, but I feel like there's a gap in my understanding of what the plan is for how we roll these things out. And I feel uncomfortable releasing the spec without knowing that plan, just in case it feeds back on the spec, right?
Yeah, so there's no real opposition to the changes made. It's more of the practical execution of them is what I'm hearing. Is that right?
Yeah, I do think sometimes, you know, this is not my particular hobby horse, but, you know, we made, you know, Natalie also go all the way back to an RFC drawing board for the one, you know, like timestamp environment variable. And we are doing like a refactor of the different labels on builders and stuff like that. Like, would those changes need more eyes on them is another question as well.
Yeah, I would definitely defer to the core team. Like I said, I've been doing this as part of some of the sort of outcomes from the builder refactor stuff, and then kind of throwing in the stack in the mix too, because it just made sense. But yeah, some better guidance would be ideal on how we'd like to proceed with this.
Maybe we don't need a specific RFC. I just want us to at least like write down sort of the rollout plan for the stack stuff, because in my mind, that's the biggest anxiety I have, and it intersects with this.
Yeah, there's the stack stuff, but I feel like your original kind of intention there, Emily, was kind of independent of that, right? Like this is just a larger change, kind of moving a bunch of stuff like the life cycle distribution into distribution, or distribution spec kind of having larger basis service area, I think was your original point, unrelated to the stack rollout plan.
Yeah, I think there's two things coupled in here. There's the stack rollout plan and there's the scope of the distribution spec and how that affects all the players who are trying to make a compatible set of things, right?
So if I'm understanding your ask correctly, maybe this is more well scope for maybe the guidance Javier is looking for, is that those are two separate asks. Like there's the RFC for basically increasing the surface area of distribution, kind of moving some of those things. And then there is not the like actual rollout plan is not asking for an RFC. That's just say we need to go and do that work and lay out a plan for it.
They're coupled in my mind because, or it's hard to decouple them because the distribution spec is now taking on the stack components, right? And that is a change that affects the rollout of the stack stuff.
Would you want that if we were to ask for an RC, would you want that rollout plan to be part of that?
Not necessarily, no.
I do think it's a nice use case, right? To think about the sort of structure of the spec in a scenario where we need to do a rollout such as the stack removal. Because then we see the sort of cross or the impact that may be across different interfaces.
Is this something you're interested in? If we were to ask for an RFC, is this something you'd be interested in driving, Javier, with help and input from others?
I can certainly try. I just know my input. Like the only other big thing that I have on my plate is the project descriptor stuff / prepare stuff, which I wanted to get a POC out for. Okay. And it seems pretty substantial as well.
Okay. Well, we don't have to decide right here, but we should probably get an owner for driving out definitely the stack rollout plan for how we're actually going to go do that this year, which I think Nally has been asking for since the beginning of the year. So something we can get going on. In the last 5 or so minutes, let's move on to RFCs. Like this list has been dwindling down. Support Docker files.
Maybe we should leave a comment just to direct people to the spec PR as a place to hammer out further details. I think that would be the most productive.
Is this how you do this? What is the, do you have that handy? 298, I think is what Justin said. Did you, I remember we were talking about doing some office hours or something. Did we ever do that?
We never scheduled it, but I suggested everyone to look at the spec PR first, just so we can get on the same page and make that meeting more productive. So I can follow up in a few days to try to.
Would we want to try to maybe do something next week when Sam is back from vacation.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Maybe like either office hours or something async.
Yeah.
Run image S phone. I think you also tackling out on this, Natalie. Or at least you or Jesse.
Yeah, I think the
Just need reviews.
This one in particular is blocked, right?
yeah, we could probably draft it and then close it later if the other one is accepted.
Okay. This is depend on the one you just opened recently.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to move this to block or we want to draft it? I'll just make it a draft. All right. Moving on, next one. Support for pack tunnel. I think this is blocked, but Javier left a bunch of comments I was seeing, or I saw today.
Yeah, I think it's my opinion that this probably should be unblocked if we want something like this to exist, because I think it's sort of independent of the prepare conversation now.
Okay.
I'll confess that in this constellation of back tunnel, project tunnel,
The tunnel.
RFCs, I've sort of lost track of which one's the latest or like where to focus my reviews, which made me more delinquent about doing it. So just if you could prod me in the right direction for what the highest priority area to get feedback at the moment.
Yeah. I will keep that in mind as I come across some. I was going to propose, given that this is the scope now of PAC, whether or not that should be a, what is it called? A sub-team RFC.
Hmm.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Sub-team. Is Joe still driving and owning pack tunnel, or are you taking that on, Javier?
I know he's very opinionated, so
Okay.
yeah, I definitely want to get his buy-in on anything that I put forth.
Okay. Cosine integration. Was a thing we were not putting back in life cycle? It's going to be a platform level thing. Is that where we last left?
Sub team RFC platform.
Is this back to platform and not implementation?
Yeah, I think so. Was the outcome of the last working group? We discussed it at least.
And this is sub team. Okay. Okay. Should I reassign Ben off the list then, if it's a sub-team RFC? Ben, if I unassign you, does it automatically reassign someone?
I believe anytime you change the labels, specifically the labels
Do I have
to
to
add
like
to another team.
create a new event?
Yeah. You'll know pretty quickly whether or not that actually happened because it'll kick off in the stuff at the bottom.
Yeah. Utility build pack for profile. I think the only outstanding comments are the one from Emily on this. Around the two executables.
Sorry, since leaving that comment, I haven't looked at the changes.
I don't think he's made changes, just commented on basically explaining why. Maybe this is something we can drive inside of BAT on Friday. Give you time to look between now and Friday.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool. Run image SMOM. Nally's new RFC. Is this something you want to talk about tomorrow, Natalie?
Yeah, could probably benefit from real-time discussion.
Is this, should I label this as the implementation? I know it says a lot of platforms, but it seems like a lifecycle thing. Yes. Cool. And then proposed alternative project scaffolding impact. I'd either like to talk about this tomorrow or at that on Friday. I think this is basically future stuff built on top of Joe's older other RFC that we kind of punted all the complexity of supporting more than just his bash stuff too.
Should that be a sub-team RFC for pack, for platform?
Is it
It's
specific to
interesting because it
platform?
ties into stuff like Build Pack author tooling would want to provide, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like the discussion you were having in here, Javier, of like how should it work? How should it get owned? Like, should it just live inside a pack? Like, ideally, probably bad is not just like having to PR a bunch of stuff in a pack all the time.
I propose breaking up stuff from pack, but I know that's a bigger conversation.
I'm
Yeah.
on board with that.
Cool. Well, let's why don't we talk about that tomorrow then? And Javier can.
We're gonna fight about whether it's plugins or just imported libraries, though.
Exactly. Cool.
But that's a bike shed if there ever was one.
Yeah. So I think that's it for RFCs. Do we have other stuff besides those two things we want to put on agenda for tomorrow? I'll take the people doing nothing and just looking at their cameras as a no. Awesome. Well, I'll see everyone tomorrow, hopefully, for working group. Thanks, everyone.